G'day guys, welcome back to Money in the Tank episode 42. We're all back, we're all off the sick beds, or Brad and Arnie in particular. We missed you guys the other week, but we're definitely here and we're looking forward to filling all our tankers, the goodness of all the market updates and the economic news coming your way today. So without further ado, my name's Joel Seach, Principal Advisor, Harpel FG.
Arnie, Finance Professional.
Brad, Generalist and Startup Guy.
Lovely. Startup Guy. Love that one.
Startup Guy.
We're into it today. So last week we touched on a bit of the Evergrande information and touching, I think, just because of the recency of the current week-on-week CPI stuff, inflation stuff, and interest rate stuff. I think we just keep coming with that sort of information that's coming through. And this week is no different with the Federal Reserve. So if we wanted to touch on starting off on the Fed Reserve's CPI, latest data coming out from the markets in the CPI.
But before we do, we've got to do two things. Rivkin's rules. And while you're getting it ready, Jolly, I'll just say, if you want to get us, it's at Money in the Tank on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And please like, comment, subscribe, and send any questions, Q&A, or if you've got a good 50-50 idea for us, please send it through because we love that.
I'm sorry, Arnie, I'm jumping ahead, mate. I'm getting too excited to touch on the inflation rates.
Jolly's saying positive inflation news and he's just jumping on it. Markets are up.
Loving it. Markets are up. We're rolling. We're rolling. So let's. I found the Bible again. It's back. The Bible is back.
I love that picture.
After a small hiatus, I couldn't find it. Let's have a look at what we've got right
There was fears, but it's good now. We're good.
We've got page 54 or page 55. So I've got two on page 54 for you guys. So nurture your insight. Aspire to be a good insider trader. So not insider. It's a play on words there from Riv. And then have a set of rules that you must follow. Which is under the chapter of the rules on investments. So
I was going to say, Rivkin's the last at least three that I've been with you, Joel, have been above and beyond the usual Riv quality.
It depends on which chapter we jump on, to be honest, because he's got different chapters. So he's got his own personal things, and then he's got so he's got Rivkinisms and.
This is very, very philosophical lately.
I like the random nature of it, but I also think that having a framework is important. So that second quote, definitely, and we've touched on that before, framework for your investing, super important. Get one if you don't have one.
Remove the emotion out of it.
Yes.
It only took me 15 years to work that out. The sooner you learn it, the better.
Follow the rules you set. Don't break the rules you set. That will avoid a lot of pitfalls and a lot of issues occurring.
I always break my own rules, especially when it comes to like specky punts on like Australian mining stocks. I just can't everything in my framework says don't invest in those, and then what am I doing? I'm investing in specky miners, baby.
I've got a pretty cool slide I'll share with you guys either today or on a podcast coming up where it talks about not reacting to market volatility and avoiding, it's a Dow Jones specific one. So Dow Jones being the American index, it talks about if you invested X amount of dollars over 20 years up to 2021, missing the worst 25 days, missing the best 25 days, missing the best 20 days, 15, etc. I think it's in the other order, missing the best 5 days. And it talks about what that would do to your initial investment if you were to miss those certain days. So I'll share that with the tankers, either this episode or one upcoming.
It's an interesting one, but I think that insider trading one is an interesting one as well. I mean, personally, back in June when the Goldman Sachs report came out on lithium, and I think I mentioned it on here, at the time, I was reading Canaccord and a bunch of other kind of investment banks theses on kind of lithium, and it was very, very counter to what Goldman was saying, and you had lithium stocks all drop by about 40, 50, 60% in June. But kind of, insider trading. Insider, and only about a month and a half, and back up, 50, 70% on some of those, on the three that I bought. So don't get me wrong, I get stuff wrong, but sometimes insights does work.
One of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite investors, John P. Pingu, just bag hold until victory.
I believe in that as well, Arnie. Just bag hold, mate.
Just never realize those losses.
No, just get into things on what you think are insights, and then just hold them. Eventually, you'll be all right.
Anyway, let's get into CPI, boys. Who wants to kick off?
I'll kick off.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
I guess the exciting news this week, the interesting news this week is the new data coming out of the US showed consumer prices rose 8.5% in the 12 months ending July, slowing down for the first time in months in a potential sign. Here we go. The Federal Reserve's effort to cool the economy may finally be working. Economists were expecting prices to rise 8.7% on an annual basis after they spiked 9.1%. And so overall prices were unchanged from June, better than economists' expectations, so flat, calling for a 0.2% increase and much lower than the previous month's increase of 1.3%, according to data released by the Labor Department on Wednesday in the US. I guess
it's funny how the market reacts so rapidly to that, like the Dow bumping by 500 points off of 0.2%. Core inflation, increase, I guess you could say. An expected increase, but it was 0.2 down. So
and then Nasdaq up, 2.9%.
Yep.
You got crypto. I guess crypto and Nasdaq being growth stocks. Obviously, any time that inflation is getting a handle on it, and it looks like we're returning to possible low inflation, low interest rates in the future, suddenly growth stocks and crypto go mental. I think ETH. We'll cover it off in our crypto thing, but I think it's up about 8, 9, 10% today, and so it is amazing, Joe. Especially that I guess the majority of the reduction or the lesser than expected is all just to do with energy.
Yeah, the decline. So that's what you were saying, right? It's flat, and that's why the market reacted so well. But if you actually delve into the specific categories, food in America was still up like 1%, so they're still feeling the pinch there. Medical gear was still up, and the massive drop, like you just suggested, was all in energy, and I think it was down like 4.6%.
7.7.
Oh, was it more than that? Okay, yeah. But
anyway, 7.7 in gasoline prices, I should say.
Yeah, okay. But across all of energy, I think it was 4.6.
Yeah.
So that's why it looks flat. So how is the situation there? Obviously, it's moving in the right direction. That's what you want, is people overall cost of living not to be increasing anymore. But what's your perspective, boys, on do you think at the next meeting, do you think more hikes still?
I think there has to be.
I guess we're talking domestically in Australia.
No, sorry, I mean in America.
America, yeah. So in the US, I guess just reading the paragraph here is the headline CPI index for July rose 8.5 year over year, but was flat compared to June. And economists were expecting increase of 8.7 and 0.2. However, respectively, core inflation, which strips out volatile food and energy prices, also saw a smaller than expected increase. So it was slightly down across the board. The Fed Reserve will weigh the report along with other key economic data ahead of its September meeting, where it's slated to hike interest rates again. So, the Fed will do what it feels is in the best interest of the economy in America. They'll obviously take that information into account when they're making their decision, but that won't be the CPI figure. Won't necessarily be the be all end all. It may adjust how much they hike it potentially, and I'm also interested to see how that then flows into Australia. As to where the RBA, the Reserve Bank of Australia, expects their inflation figures to potentially be coming up for their next meeting at the start of September as well, first Tuesday of September, because I believe the Fed were about a month or two ahead of us with increasing rates at the start of...
I think 2 months. Yeah, I think 2 months. I think it was April or March, and we did it in April. Elections.
It'll be interesting to see how, I guess, our inflation, whether we're a little bit of a laggard behind, the inflation numbers there, or whether we're starting to see it cool a little bit here as well. I have seen a few kind of recent clips saying that it is starting to cool the touch here in Australia.
What's your gut feel, Brad? Do you think the Fed's turning dovish and will pivot, or do you think they're going to keep hiking?
I'm known for my, I guess, sometimes glass half empty opinions of federal and central banks. And I think, last time I was proven right. This time, I hope I'm not proven right. I think that in the short term, I think they will continue to rise. And then I don't think it'll necessarily change their schedule, but if we see a few months like this, where it looks like peak inflation has occurred, I think there's a few things playing in here, especially on the energy markets. You have massive kind of hits to the energy markets in the first few quarters with Russia playing out the rest of it. And there's been a bit of a rearrangement of energy supplies. And don't get me wrong, energy is still going to be a big thing to watch inflation-wise for supply and demand due to the underinvestment. And we kind of went into that in the oil episode. But I think we've also had record in the US specifically, record inventory. And so that will start probably playing out in terms of some deflationary environments. And I guess what I'm watching for is that the Fed, all central banks that have inflation as a concern, don't just take 2-3 months worth of peak inflation data and possibly some worrying signs in the economy, recession or job numbers or whatever. Not that we've seen really anything in there yet, and start tapering off, thinking they've got inflation under control. And then flip flop, because I think the flip flopping. I mean, the quote that I've kind of stole out of all my reading was the market is very optimistic about the Fed Reserve's ability to tame inflation. But as time goes by, and if the Fed is unable to bring inflation down to a more comfortable level, the markets could start to question their credibility, pricing in higher inflation expectations while higher volatility, especially with previous mistakes made.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key one that a few people have made. Michael Burry's made it, all the rest of it. That the Fed, obviously, and central banks have to stay in control of inflation and not just kind of whimsical, go that way and this way and that way, this way, this way, that way. And so I'd like to kind of see inflation really, really kind of, err on the side of getting inflation down over recession fears. That's kind of where I am.
Absolutely agree. 2 comments just to wrap up that. I think with energy prices, one thing we'll do well to remember is America is still leaning heavily on their reserves. So even though inflation is down in that particular category, as they measure it, it's not like they're buying it, in the market. They're using their reserves and depleting their reserves. And secondly, one thing which you touched on, which I think is exactly how I feel, I think the sentiment of this good result, if you want to call it that, a good result, has it's what's caused the markets to pump. But I do think this is not like victory over inflation. It's like the first positive sign we've seen. So they still need to be very careful. And I think the only lever they've got to pull is high interest rates. And if they want to actually destroy demand, if they want to actually remove money from the market, that's what they have to do. They have to keep rising. So I think a hike is still on the table, and I think a 75-point basis hike is still on the table. And then, as Jolly mentioned, what do we care about? Obviously, we care about our own domestic market. I think our Reserve Bank of Australia will have to follow suit. And I think Jolly and I said last time that we both believe still another interest rate hike of 50 basis points in Australia is what is likely. And I still feel the same.
Yeah, I'll probably go, I think, at least another 100 points personally.
In America or here?
I think both.
Yeah.
Even though America is slightly ahead of us.
Well, last week we said that I thought the split was going to be for America 75, 50, 25 till the end of the year. And Joel said with Australia, he thinks it's going to be 50-50, then wait and see. And I concur with him on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think like 100. So I think that same thing and then wait and see. Yeah. I just hope that wait and see doesn't go that flippy floppy. And Arnie, on your point, really to wrap this up, is 1 million barrels of oil in the US are being released every day from their strategic reserves. Don't get me wrong, they got
a lot.
Something like they got 1,244 million barrels of. So
is that all?
Yeah,
is that all?
Just a little bit. They could release a million barrels a day for 4 years, but I mean that is obviously impacting energy and will continue to impact the energy prices. But that will kind of wrap up our discussion, I guess, on the CPI side of things.
Should we jump into rapid fire news and crypto update? Actually, we were going to ask you about really
Solana. I'll touch on Solana in the crypto update.
Okay. Just
wanted to go through some quick stuff in case people missed it this week from the Chinese ambassador.
Yes.
So as of today, Chinese ambassador Taiwan, I'm just going to throw it all in the same melting pot. But so China says military drills near Taiwan have completed as of today. So that's some good news because they were playing absolute havoc with shipping lanes and Taiwan. So that doesn't change anything in terms of some of the embargoes on trade and stuff like that. But the military drills of shooting artillery into the water and lobbing over ballistic missiles into contested economic zones over. Always a good thing.
Absolutely.
Always a good thing. I guess Australia has been calling for calm to return amid the drills, with Beijing kind of this whole past week demanding Australia and, especially respecting China's core interests. And I think what I found interesting was yesterday, the ambassador Chen Li went to the press club. I mean, it was a bit of a non-event in a lot of cases, but I think some just quick important points. There was a question which was, you mentioned the 50th anniversary of relationship between Australia and China. To mark this, is it possible that China will make practical moves to remove the relationship, such as lifting trade restrictions on Australia and or releasing Australian citizen Cheng Li? Don't know who that is, so apologies on that. I think that was, I can't remember. I think it was a journalist. But,
she's a report. She's an Australian reporter,
journalist?
and she's been missing since early 2020. And the Australian ambassador was not allowed into her trial, closed trial.
Standard closed trial, 99.9% conviction rates. But there you go, journalist got it right. Thanks, Arnie, for the input there, mate. And so the reply was, currently there have been top-level communications, high-level contacts, even face-to-face contacts. We have not yet come to the stage to discuss on how to solve those specific issues, either political issues or trade issues or some individual case issues. We're ready to compare notes with the Australian government to get engaged in the process. China's signaled a possible reset of investment and trade relationship with Australia. And in covering that, there was some information I've just kind of read that I'll just sort of throw in, which is Rio Tinto have come out this week and made some comments around basically that they're starting to see that with the recent change in governments, with Labor coming in, and I guess these high-level discussions, the work the government is doing is being felt. The thawing is coming back into business circles, into the Australian-Chinese Business Council. We're feeling it in China as well as our Chinese teams. So I guess, with the ambassador, there's a number of questions. If you want to go and look at the interview, there's a whole bunch of stuff, I guess, that was a lot more pertinent to Taiwan.
Yeah, I followed it and I saw all the Taiwan questions. But that point you just made, I mean, I'm not going to comment on Taiwan. And
Neither am I.
Apologies if my laugh seemed flippant then. I take that the Australian journalist thing very seriously. It's just a comment that Brad made about my chiming in. But if I just separate that out and I think about it from the Rio Tinto perspective, there's positive news for Australia, positive news for China. And it's something like in that, obviously it's a complex situation, but if we're getting our exports back up, that's one of our, if not our, I think that's our biggest trading partner
by at least double.
I think we went through that on the pod 2 ago where China was I think it was 3 times above our next closest.
Yeah, it's 2.5 times ahead of America.
I would say
they make up a third of our exports.
I was about to say, top of my head, a third of our import exports. So yeah, thank you, Brad. But anyway, I just that part in particular is good news. But yeah, there was a lot of questions about Taiwan, and the journalist was pretty hard hitting. So
yeah, and the journalists were hard hitting, and I think it was there was just some interesting. If you're into geopolitics, I think there was some interesting bits and pieces there for you to kind of.
Well, you have to be, don't you? Like, because if we actually think about this, bring it back to a money in the tank perspective, and Jolie, love your thoughts on this, but we need to be aware of geopolitics, especially in that region, because of one, how much China supplies to the world. And if you want to think about Taiwan, in particular, the semiconductor industry and how important that is to the world, as we've seen through the pandemic, what tensions, fears of war, Jolie, what do you think about?
It's a balancing act because, short term, we're already in supply demand chain issues. So you don't want to kind of extrapolate or accentuate what's going on there. And then secondly, China's a huge trading partner for us in Australia and Australasia. But you've got a balancing act, I think, over the medium to longer term. You don't want to have a Band-Aid fix where it's just like, we'll sweep it under the rug. It's all dead and buried. We're all good to go now and we're fine and everything's hunky-dory and we're moving on with things. You want to have a bit of that, but you also want to sort of have that kind of trepidation to say, hey, don't forget where we've been the last few years. We're not here to be pushed around or bullied into coercing us to say things just to appease you. but we're going to stand our ground, but we're also going to work with you and be cordial and try to make a working relationship. Well, you will respect, we'll respect what's going on in your country, but we've also got to respect our stance and view as well. And you can't force us into having certain opinions.
Can I jump in there? Sorry,
Yeah,
Brad,
sure.
I'll let you have a go at it too, but agree with everything you said, Jolie. One point that the ambassador made yesterday, which I agree with, is that when you read about Chinese news in Australia,
I was going to say this point, so you can take it.
Yeah, fair enough. It's always negative,
Mhm.
and you got to remember, this is a country of 1.4 billion people. Not all of those people are the government, and not all Australians are our government. And I really feel like we see a bias in the media here, and unless you go far and wide to read external sources, I'm not saying I agree with I disagree with anything you've said, and I'm not saying when it comes to things like human rights issues in China, I am against how the Uyghurs have been treated. But every country has issues like these, and it's like you need to be able to separate them. Like you were saying, it gets murky, it gets complex. So that's what I want to say on that point of view. I feel like sometimes the positive parts of China and the relationship with China and Australia are not well documented in our media.
Yeah, there's definitely positive, and look to how successful we've made a trading relationship for the past, couple of decades now with
40,
China
50 years.
Yeah, China being our huge, biggest trading partner. It's a working relationship and it works well. And we've got a lot of Chinese, citizens that come here to make Australia their home, and it's fantastic. And I think the relationship in the tourism sector as well has been really good too. So we do try to come at, I guess, money in the tank with reading between the lines and reading between the bullshit that sometimes the media and the aggregators will push, because they will push those certain topics and the agendas, and try to just pick out the press club lines of just the negative things, or just this, he said this, but they'll miss maybe, a large portion of positive stuff too. So, because bad news sells, we know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just closing out on that one, on a couple of points there, which is obviously TSMC is a huge one. And it's the only product at the moment, being silicon and chips, that isn't under embargo from China of Taiwan. So surprise, surprise, kind of its importance. Also,
so that's semiconductors, Brad.
Semiconductors, correct? Yep. TSMC, most advanced semiconductor.
Which are used for car huge
everything,
cars and
missiles,
laptops, computers,
everything high end. They're down to 3 nanometers on their chips, so they're kind of from an advance. And then I guess the important thing is that China also has just failed again. So they put together a massive slush fund of about $120 billion to jumpstart their semiconductor industry. And I just kind of was watching, I spent a good 9 hours this week kind of deep diving into the Chinese semiconductor industry for a second time.
Big week for you, mate.
Big week for me. COVID and just reading semiconductor stuff.
Well, when you got COVID, what else are you going to
do? I'm doing a bit of research for an article on, I guess, the economics of semiconductors that I'll be putting up. But very interesting to kind of see how, for a second time now, this one of their kind of big leaps forward has kind of been overrun by corruption internally, and so their kind of reliance on TSMC is something they've tried to get away from twice and haven't. But going by your point, Arnie, I think it's really important that I think the big thing for me was one, which was a kind of an expert's kind of assessment of this. Ambassador in the press club, which is the point when the ambassador raised that point about Australian news cycles and negativity, and it's just focusing on that. When it was all fact checked and looked at it, the expert came back saying, "Yeah, we're not so good." So you got to look at that middle ground. And I think the last point I'll make on it is when the ambassador talked about there's nothing wrong with Australia having their own opinions, but he goes, "Can we start?" I did have a chuckle. Can we start treating it like we are in a marriage? He goes, where if we need to do it behind closed doors and have conversations, or if we need to go to a counsellor, we can discuss our issues, but can we stop going out into the streets and just announcing our relationship problems? Because when you announce it if we discuss it behind closed doors, it stays behind closed doors and we can move forward. When we announce it on the streets about what's going wrong in our marriage, then it leaves parties really, really non-amicable.
So they don't want free speech, or
it's not that. It's about tensions, mate.
I think it's about tensions and about what is discussed in the open, i.e., Penny Wong's signing on to, a joint statement from Japan, etc., on Taiwan and announcing it out to the world, ignoring, and he made a point. Now, I'm not, again, I think I've stated my views quite clearly on China, and I won't go into it again. But when it looked at, there was 5 previous kind of announcements made by the ambassador in which Penny Wong and that ignored. And then it wasn't until the latest kind of the 6th announcement that then they responded with this letter. And so it's just about kind of, I think there needs to be a bit better comms. And that's not saying that China doesn't throw around their weight, but I think, like Arnie said, I don't think that, Australia doesn't throw around their weight in Asia Pacific, or nor does America or the US. I think
no country's perfect, including all the 3 you just mentioned. Australia, China, and US all have human rights issues, current issues,
Yes.
and our media focuses on the Chinese ones. So why? Like,
Did anyone see the Irish MP in the pink singlet in the middle of the EU Parliament?
What a boss! No, I didn't see it.
With a massive blonde hair dropping off, and he's just rocked up to EU Parliament, and he started making a conversation just about, not about China at all, but just talking about democracy and discussing America, and saying, just talking about their internal kind of starvation rates, poverty rates. He was comparing the EU to America. I think it's just an interesting thing not to forget the forest for the trees, but I think that subject probably wraps up.
But Jolly. Free speech champion over there. Hey,
it's a balancing act, because there's a fine line. There's a fine line between free speech and being kind of muted or being kind of told not to.
You don't want to pander to anyone.
End of the day, I don't like Scott Morrison. Okay, that was just me. I'll put it by my hand. But with Scott Morrison calling it ahead of, for instance, making the investigation into COVID, which set off this whole trade thing against China, absolute BS, right? Because he was just merely commenting, saying that we should have impartial and transparent investigation into COVID, and China didn't like that free speech. So again, I will sit firmly on the side of free speech.
Yeah, you got to be careful. Obviously, some things, are better left to be sorted behind closed doors, because it's just going to create angst and annoyance, which is probably not worth that. But at the same time, you don't want to be gagged in terms of not being able to, stand up for what you think and you feel is right.
I was going to make a comment about gagging, but I'm not going to go there.
One point, I might just, I don't even know if I should add this, but when you get sentiment like this in the news, which is negative, and you can see it in America over the last year, there was a rise in anti-Asian sentiment based on media and
I was living there, having an amount of Asian shootings.
Yeah, and it's like, that's what I mean by it's a sentiment thing and it's a tensions thing. It's like, because the political things need to be addressed, but if you do it behind closed doors, you don't incite the populace in negative ways that you don't.
Having a Malaysian Chinese wife who's been kind of abused on public transport 3 times since we've been back in Australia. Yeah. And China being used and COVID being used as the reasons to abuse it. I mean, it does come out to play, that sentiment, and so we've just got to be careful of that. But free speech 101, all for it.
All right, let's move on to the happy topic of crypto fraud.
You're still a little bit of COVID. Don't do that to me. You can't do that to me, Hans. What are you doing? Jeez. All right, crypto. Before we go into fraud, I thought we'll just start off on a glass half full, eh?
A little bit of green on the charts.
A little bit of green on the chart.
If you're listening to the podcast, Brad's just brought up the top 15 crypto stock, crypto. What do we call them? Crypto coins up on the screen, and the majority. We've got some green charts happening.
So I think the big one to have a look at is ETH up 12% today.
Well, that's good, because I haven't actually looked at my Binance account for about 6 months. So
most people, Jolly, you're not alone on that, Brent. It's like the other day, I logged into my Ledger wallet, which just has my remaining little bit of, and I was like, oh, hello.
Pleasant surprise.
You've gone from absolutely nothing to something. Bitcoin also up 6%. I think the key things here, I started to think about things like Ethereum up about 90% to 100% over the last month. You've got Cardano up from about 37 cents up to 54. Did
BTC, Bitcoin, end up dropping below that 20K kind of
intraday?
Point?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I don't think it actually closed. But you've got like Avalanche and stuff up 23%, Polkadot. And so these are all the, the top level. You've got to remember like Polkadot and Cardano are the other two founders of the three founders of Ethereum. So these are all pretty solid coins. Even our first topic discussion of Solana, you would have seen up about 10% over the week and 8% today. It just goes to show that some, the whole crypto market's up 6% today, with obviously Ethereum trending off the back of just flat inflation news, better than expected. It's crazy because there's a whole bunch of money still on the sidelines of growth investors. I was kind of reading an article, and I also catch up with a whole bunch of growth hedge funds and PE and VC firms because of Hammertech. But there's so much money on the sidelines at the moment because they all raised new funds over the past like 6 months, from kind of the end of last year through to about May this year. And they're all just sitting on this cash that's going up. So any opportunity to kind of just jump into the growth market is just getting overdone, which is a bit crazy, in my opinion. I think they should just chill out there for a little bit. But anyway, good if you're holding some crypto, some growth stocks, good times. But discussing, I guess, the topic, and yes, I do listen to the podcast. I think there's a cheeky comment made of whether or not Brad...
I figured you would because you edit it. So
yeah, you would hope I watch it. I was just listening to like the bits and then when that came out, I was like, yeah, I edit, so I have to listen to it, of course. I might say no forced. I love listening to episodes that I'm not involved in. So Solana, and I think last week, I don't know if the kind of facts were out last week. I believe about a week ago, but they started coming out about 5-6 days ago. So the hack stole $8 million worth of Solana. There was also some other coins actually hit, and it was mainly to do, or all to do with a wallet provider, so a digital cryptocurrency wallet provider called Slope Wallet. It was saving users. This is just so stupid. It was saving users seed phrases in plain text. So what does that mean? When you create a wallet on any of these cryptocurrencies, or if you have yourself a hard wallet, which I do on my desk. Here we are. Got one of these little fancy things. Not much on there at the moment. Then you get a 12, 20, 22, or 24 word seed phrase given to you. And that seed phrase is for backup. So if I ever lose this, I can restore my crypto wallets on another one of these using that 24 word seed phrase. And so basically it allows any person that wants to gain access to a wallet, if you have their seed phrase, you can just clone their whole wallet and steal whatever's in it. And it's just that Slope was used for mainly Solana. And so that's the lucky thing. But they found that multiple wallets had this problem, which is they were storing. So instead of when you create a wallet, you get given that seed phrase. And, the ones that I use say basically write this down on a piece of paper. And basically this is the last time you ever see this. And if you don't write this down and you lose your crypto wallet, then see you later, right? That's why you got people,
like that bloke who trying to go through the dumpster, the tip to try and get his billions.
He raised $20 million from an American VC to go into a UK tipster to find $250 million worth of Bitcoin.
Should have wrote down the seed phrase, mate.
Should have wrote down the seed phrase. And so what was happening was this wallet was storing people's seed phrases on their servers and not even encrypting that. They were storing it in plain text.
Oh, that's so stupid.
And so the vulnerability, and what plain text means is just as it sounds, everybody, plain text. It looks like, you go into, a notepad document and it'll have Arnie and the Bitcoin wallet and then his plain text keys.
So it wasn't even a mastermind hacker. It was just some scrub who got in there and just saw the plain text and was like, easy done.
Yeah, because they were saved on the Slope server and the phrases were not encrypted. Anybody with access to the specific Sentry server could potentially access users' private keys. The low security standard will lead to a breach, giving hackers the ability to acquire seed phrases and trade funds. So basically, the Slope mobile app sends off mnemonic via transport layer security to their centralized Sentry server, which just shouldn't happen. They should not be sending anybody's keys off. And so think of this as just, again, all it's done is, in my opinion, which is good, is just reigniting the long debate around the security around hot wallets, which is ones that like are software related, and these little ones.
Cold storage.
So if you've got a significant amount of money, or even enough money just to make it painful if you're going to lose the money, highly recommend cold. Everybody, just kind of putting that out there, and that's not advice at all.
No advice, general in nature.
That's just security advice. That's not even investment advice.
We educate here. You do with the information what you will.
Correct. And so that's the Solana. That's what it was. Quick few other things. ETH merge.
Yep.
So I know that we talked about Ethereum merge, but institutional investors are piling into Ether at the moment, which have recorded 7 straight weeks of positive inflows since the announcement. Inflows were another 16 million last week, totaling $160 million of inflows in the last 7 weeks from institutional investors into ETH. It's due to greater clarity relating to the upcoming merge, which is set for September 19th. We'll still see if it. I
don't think it's not actually known, right? But they've been this week. They've been doing the test merge, so it's imminent.
It is imminent, but again, Vitalik and ETH are known for just kind of doing it when it's right, not necessarily hitting dates. And this increase is going to, just for everyone knowing, that a block time will drop to 12 seconds instead of 13 seconds. It's going to be the first of 5 planned upgrades for the network. It's going to increase speeds by about 10%, but it's going to lay the path for the surge, which is the next planned upgrade, which will bring 100,000 transactions per second, which will be, I don't know, I think Visa is about 20,000 or 30,000. So it's starting to go, 2-3 times faster. And then the move to proof of stake instead of proof of work will not only bring down the cost of and price of video cards for all us gamers out there and never have to deal with that again. I guess it's going to bring kind of the yield bearing asset with cash flows. So, there's going to be some yield to be made on ETH in the future.
Interesting space to watch.
Interesting space. And the last one is the short squeeze on Celsius.
Okay.
Which is Celsius, for is that massive kind of borrowing lending platform that went down and kind of went bankrupt in the American courts, and it's going through the, I can't remember these 2 types of bankruptcy in America. It's the one where you can restructure.
Yeah, Chapter 13, restructure one. Yeah,
and I think it's 7. I think it's the 13 one.
Yeah.
Chapter 7, the bad one. And so the Cell token has jumped to $1.63 on Monday and is now trading at a higher price than before Celsius encountered financial difficulties due to a community short squeeze, everybody.
That's
so it got down to 15 cents and it's up to $1.63 at the moment because the community behind it believed that there was a lot of shorts on it that need to be filled, and it's just GameStop all over again.
Don't
I'd throw that in.
Don't they know that SHIB is the way? Anyway,
obviously not.
Segue into the rapid fire news items. Then, Brad, thanks for the crypto update.
I'll make this very quick, boys. All right. So, it doesn't mention which city, but China has locked down a city of 1.4 million people after COVID outbreak. So they're still pursuing COVID zero. Elon Musk seeks to question the Twitter employees who count the bots. So, still beating that drum. And I also will say that over the week, in the early part of the week, there was a lot of selling pressure in Tesla, and it's been come to light that through Form 4s that Elon had to lodge that it was him selling something almost close to $7 billion worth of his shares and he quoted in one of his tweets that just in case one of the third parties does not come to the table for the Twitter acquisition, he wants to avoid an emergency sale of Tesla stock. So it's been hypothesized now that with his current stake and all of his funding raising over the last however long, he now has enough money himself to go ahead with the deal plus his debt financing. Fed Evans quote today, so this week's inflation report, first positive report, and they expect interest rates will increase this year. They are optimistic that core PCE inflation will be closer to 2.5%. Evans also said the economy is almost surely a little more fragile, but would take something adverse to trigger a recession. And then has quoted as saying that he expects next year's economic growth for America to be 1.5% to 2%. And the last rapid fire news item is that the IRS in America has doubled their workforce. They have,
there's been a lot of
80,000 people, an extra 80,000 jobs. So they're going to go to 160,000. And now, on a manpower personnel basis, the IRS in America has more people than all other government agencies there combined.
IRS out in force.
87,000 new IRS workers this week.
Yeah. And we won't make a comment for any further than that. Jolie, what were you going to say? Sorry,
watch out, Wesley Snipes. I think he got done for tax evasion many years ago. I'm sure he's all clean now.
We got a 50-50. What's going on, Joel?
No, quick, a couple more to tack onto you there. So the Reserve Bank of Australia, Phil Lowe, was laughed at when he told a conference in Zurich, Switzerland in June that Australia only had official inflation data released every 3 months rather than monthly, which the US, the UK, Canada publish monthly. And I believe we might be going to monthly from October 26. A monthly CPI indicator will be published alongside the September quarter inflation data.
How's that? We're being laughed at. Thanks, Phil.
There you go, laughed at, yeah. And then the other one was the Russia-Ukraine invasion in Feb caused the average petrol prices, as we know, to surge to above $2 a litre for the first time ever. In the March budget, the former Liberal Treasurer Frydenberg responded by having the fuel excise come off for 6 months, and that's going to come back on again. So we expect, I think it's around September 28th, the excise will be rising back on. So enjoy the reprieve at the moment, and we'll see what happens to fuel prices. We're expecting them to maybe get above $2 again.
I did enjoy that one in question time where you had the opposition gone on about putting these excise back in, and it's like that was the plan that you put in place, and it's just getting followed. I just love politics. Stuff gets
no comment on that.
Stuff just gets thrown around,
and really quick
on both sides.
A really quick Q&A today from Carly M. So thanks for sending in the Q&A and the question, Carly. We love hearing from the tankers. So whenever you have a question, where's the best place for them to get us at, Arnie?
At Money in the Tank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And we prefer the questions coming through Facebook and YouTube. Yeah. But anywhere you can get us at.
Anywhere you get us at, Messenger's fine, whatnot. So this one from Carly, which was a good one. So she just noticed that the banks recently with lending have started to offer fixed rates at a lower rate again for about a 4-year term. So, what's the thought pattern around that? So, I guess in terms of that question, it's a great one from Carly, and it's prevalent to sort of we talk about rates quite a bit here and borrowing rates and whatnot, but the actuaries that are behind the banking sector that make these rates, they're sort of, I guess, forecasters as to what they deem will occur with rates down the track. So that 4-year fixed rate coming off is meaning they're thinking that the rates will go up, but then inevitably come down a touch. So they're trying to entice consumers, and don't forget the banks, they're working for the banks. So they're trying to entice consumers to say, hey, lock in, look at us out here in 4 years. We've got a really attractive rate. They're trying to get you to lock in at whatever it is, 4.99 for a 4-year fixed term, knowing very well that they feel that variables will come off and below that at that period of time. So in between that period of time, I should say. So don't forget, the actuaries are always trying to err on the side of getting people to lock in, potentially on aspect of fear or comfort or whatnot. And everyone seek their own, personal advices is general in nature, but that's why the fixed rates are coming off, is because they feel that over that period of time that the variables might dip under that, and if they can get you locking in at a 4-year term, then they're trying to get the win on their side, saying that you'll be paying overs.
Nothing to add to that, but one thing to add to that, and Brady can jump in as well if you want.
Yeah, I was going to add in, but you go.
There's no way to know. And that, as Jolie said, their best guess is obviously they think it's going to come down, which is why they want to lock in, because it's certainty for them as well. But it is still a roll of the dice as to what will happen in 4 years. No one's got a crystal ball, so it might be prudent to lock in, and it may not be. So
no one saw the RBA jumping as quickly as they did, and that's a perfect example of what Arnie just said. Is it's really hard to tell, really hard to know, and I guess when people ask that question, is it the right time to lock in? You've just got to take into account your personal circumstances and have a feeling what's going to work for you. I guess largely in Australia, for majority of the time, people are variable in the higher percentage, but during the last couple of years, they did see a spike in fixed because you couldn't get really a lower rate than we had the last couple of years. So people were right to fix in at that time. And when it starts to go up, it's a bit of a guessing game after that.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll add in is obviously the banks and the central bank have got it wrong twice in a row, both in terms of when inflation's going to hit, and then secondly, how fast rates we're going to get rise. So no one knows what's going to happen. And at the moment, I believe that it's mainly been led by CBA. I know that Westpac has also joined the thing, but it's mainly the CBA's actuaries, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. Like you said, Joel, they're going out there trying to win some market share after their bumper. What did they just hit of their profit?
Bumper profit.
9 point something billion.
It worked out to be something like it was a significant amount.
It was. Let's have a look really quickly. I can't remember. It was over 9 bill. But
I did enjoy Brad's glancing blow there at the central bank on the way through with his.
Just kind of myself, mate.
Just a quick glancing blow.
I don't respect them at all.
Come on.
But I will say, Jolie, your advice is perfect. I think it's down to the individual choice, what's going on at that moment in time. No one knows where it's going. CBA obviously believes that we are going to be CBA optimistic 2.6% by November, dropping to 2.1% by the same month next year. And so ANZ, on the flip side, I think it's 3.35 and 2.85. So it's about 65, 75 basis point difference between ANZ and CommBank. The last one is that it's also to do with the cost of funding.
You just got
of fixed mortgages has declined. So
you just got to Jolie's catchphrase, take it with a grain of salt.
Grain of salt, baby. Grain of salt.
Love it.
50-50 for this week, crew. So we've got a good one here, 50-50. You can also send in your 50-50s to us as well. So feel free to any Q&As or 50-50 recommendations. We love to hear from the tankers in regards to that. So this one's, I guess, come at the helm of a lot of people starting to travel abroad a bit more, and we're thinking of doing a trip away maybe in 23, somewhere we're thinking beachy. But this one, I guess comes up in discussion. Or beachy, we're thinking Thailand. We were thinking Japan, but Japan doesn't have really
Vietnam, mate.
Beaches.
Check it. Vietnam.
You got a 5 and 8-year-old to throw into the equation, Brad. So it does. Vietnam possibly might be a go. We'll see.
Check out Qian or Phuket.
So you chat to, I guess, people with kids and whatnot, you talk resorts, and then you talk, beach and town and what works. So the 50-50 today is, if you had the choice, would you prefer to stay an hour away from the main town and the main beach, but a really good resort that had everything? Or would you prefer to stay at lesser accommodation, so just a 4-star, 3-star, let's say, 3.5-star, but within 2 minutes of the beach and 2 minutes of the township? So the resort has everything, has pools, has service, has kid mining facilities, has restaurant dining, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Are kids a must in this?
Personal circumstances.
So you can make your own choice. This is general in nature, these questions, mate, lifestyle choices. Would you prefer that with being away from the beach in the town, so an hour away, or would you prefer to stay at a lesser place that doesn't have those facilities, but you're a minute or two away from the town and a minute or two away from the beach?
I'll jump in. I'm always a fan of getting away from people. So away from the town, Jolly. So like say in Vietnam, for instance, Hoi An, ancient city, food town, awesome. Stay in Da Nang, 40 minutes outside in a resort with, massages, pools, beautiful stuff. And if you want to go into town, you just catch the complimentary bus into town every hour, whatever it is, and get a bit of culture and stuff. I'm even without kids, a fan of not necessarily being in the hustle and bustle.
I will take the opposite view. I prefer to be in the thick of it. But, I know I have to make a choice here. But if I put a caveat in, when I go on holiday to a place like, let's just use Thailand as a hypothetical, I always tend to do both. I have part of the trip in the thick of it, and then I have a part of the trip which is, in a remote location. Because the point you made, Jolly, about the amenities at the resort doesn't really bother me. And when you do get those amenities, even if they're far away, you tend to pay through the nose for them. If I'm paying Aussie prices for beers in my resort an hour away, I'd rather be in the thick of it getting cheap beers, in the city. So
should have said all inclusive. I should have said all inclusive.
I've got to say, when I was thinking that option, it is all inclusive. It's all inclusive.
Oh well, I'm still going to choose the one that's close to the stuff. I think in general, even with the kids in tow. That's me.
You can only ever do the resorts when that's an option. A lot of the time you don't even have that option. You just in the thick of it. But anyway, Joel, you?
I prefer the thick of it mainly because I get really restless and I hate sitting around and like I'd get bored sitting around doing nothing on holidays. I always like to be doing stuff. So yeah, I'm in the thick of it guy. If I can be a minute from the beach, then I can go to the beach when I want. If I'm a minute from the town, I can go into town when I want to, and I don't feel. I get a bit kind of claustrophobic. I'm the same on random facts, same on cruises. I hate being on like even like a Yarra cruise for 2 hours. I hate being on a place where I can't kind of get off. I sort of get a bit toey. Anyway,
there you go. That's a good one.
All the different, yeah, it's good. I think Arnie, you hit the nail on the head though. A bit of a hybrid, mate, mixture. You think about like Patagonia over the last 6 weeks.
Yeah,
there was like a week
actually defeats the 50-50 question.
That's why I picked one, right?
I said I'd go thick of it if I had to choose, but in reality, there is a bit of grey area there.
Patagonia was 6 weeks of the thick of it, and then 1 week in a resort, right?
Yeah. It's like, if you're going somewhere like Bangkok, you don't want to spend a heap of time in Bangkok, so you go for the thick of it for a little bit.
Not getting the choice, boys. You're not getting the choice.
One of the other. BKK. One of the other. That's why I'm going to thick of it.
I'm going to thick of it.
Great to catch up, crew. All right, Tankers, hit us up. Any questions coming up? 50/50s Q&A. We'd love to hear from you.
Please, the questions are a big one.
Anything you want to hear from us? Yeah.
And any feedback. Feedback's always a must. Thank you.
All right, guys.
See you all.
Take care. Bye.